People often underestimate how much damage comes from simple incompetence or a stubborn refusal to consider more than one perspective. We tend to think evil people are the biggest threat to a community or country, but clumsy decisions and short-sighted plans can be just as harmful. Throughout history, reckless certainty has led entire civilizations into crises they weren't prepared for. One well-known example comes from ancient Athens in the 5th century BC. At that time, Athens was at war with Sparta in what we now call the Peloponnesian War. Many Athenian leaders were so sure of their grand plans that they decided to expand the conflict by attacking Sicily. They believed conquering Sicily would strengthen Athens, crush Sparta's allies, and ensure their own power. In their eagerness to prove themselves right, they did not map out the potential risks. The expedition ended in disaster. The Athenian navy was destroyed, resources were wasted, and the morale of the people sank. It was an avoidable mistake, but their leaders were blinded by the idea that they had the perfect solution. Instead of pausing to ask whether there was another angle, they plowed forward, convinced that they could not possibly fail. This pattern of behavior, insisting you have all the answers while ignoring any doubt, is at the core of stupidity. It's not about having a low IQ. Instead, it's a condition of the mind where a person locks onto an idea and never questions it. In ancient Greece, there was a concept called phronesis. It was about having practical wisdom and navigating through life with balance. People who practice phronesis weigh different possibilities and remain open to being wrong. They pay attention to the complexities of a situation before deciding on a course of action. They accept that life rarely offers a single, simple solution. Stupidity flourishes when individuals refuse to step outside their narrow view. They see one tiny corner of reality and insist that it represents the whole picture. This can happen in government, in business, or in everyday arguments on the internet. Someone reads a headline, picks up a soundbite, or hears a popular rumor. Without any critical thought, they take that small piece of information and treat it as the ultimate truth. They'll argue ferociously and dismiss anyone who raises an objection, even if they haven't done the slightest bit of research themselves. Some of the worst outcomes occur when these tunnel vision individuals hold power. A leader who can't handle ambiguity will charge into conflicts and adopt policies without thinking through the long-term impact. When asked for evidence or reason, they rely on a loud voice and a strong sense of authority instead of offering proof. These leaders become dangerous because they convince large groups of people to follow them, all while clinging to flawed notions. It's not necessarily evil in the classic sense, it can simply be clueless, but the results can be just as devastating as deliberate wrongdoing. Ancient writers like Thucydides, who documented the Peloponnesian War, recognized this dynamic. He wrote about how people in power made rash choices based on overconfidence. He showed how strong emotions mixed with arrogance can spark events that spiral out of control. Without the discipline to step back and consider multiple outcomes, even a brilliant society can find itself on a path to ruin. It's a lesson that repeats in different eras and places. Whenever leaders or entire populations fixate on the idea that they already know the solution, there's a good chance they're heading towards serious problems. Shakespeare, the English playwright of the late 16th and early 17th century, understood how complicated people can be. His characters are almost never purely good or purely bad. They have layers and conflicting desires. This depth makes them realistic. He showed that a person can be both kind and cruel depending on the situation or their mood. John Keats, another English poet in the early 19th century, admired Shakespeare's ability to hold two contradictory thoughts about a character without rushing to label them one way or another. Keats called this skill negative capability, which is the capacity to remain comfortable with uncertainty and recognize life's contradictions. People who develop negative capability can handle a world that doesn't have neat answers for everything. In today's world, we often see the opposite. Many individuals jump to conclusions the moment they encounter a new idea. Instead of looking for evidence that challenges their perspective, they look for anything that confirms their bias and ignore the rest. This tendency can be harmless when it's just someone posting opinions on social media, but it becomes frightening when influential figures operate with the same narrow approach. They might draft policies that affect millions, set in motion wars, or shape educational systems, all without serious scrutiny. Another problem arises from the mixing of cynicism and certainty. A cynical person might believe they have seen it all and know exactly why everyone else is doing things wrong. They dismiss other viewpoints as naive. Combined with an unshakable conviction that they possess the only correct position, they shut out all possibilities of learning or changing course. This blend often appears in public debates, where two sides yell past each other, each side convinced of its absolute correctness. Meanwhile, real understanding never happens. To address this issue, a healthy dose of doubt can be surprisingly valuable. Doubt makes us pause and think, is there another side to this? Could I be missing something? It encourages us to try new sources of information, read historical accounts, look at data from different angles. At the same time, we don't want doubt to paralyze us. This is where phronesis or practical wisdom becomes important. Making decisions requires forward movement, but that doesn't mean rushing in blind. It means balancing thoughtful consideration with action. Good leaders and good decision-makers in everyday life stay open to revising their ideas, but they also know when they've gathered enough information to act. Consider how scientists approach uncertainty. They form hypotheses and run tests, always aware that their results might contradict what they expect. When new evidence emerges, they update their theories. Of course, not every scientist is perfect, but the method encourages a willingness to be proven wrong. This is a key difference between careful thinking and stupidity. An intelligent mind is prepared to shift gears when necessary, while a foolish mind charges straight ahead, ignoring warning signs. Even the greatest minds in history have recognized their own limitations. Socrates famously declared that true wisdom involves acknowledging how little one actually knows. By admitting he didn't have all the answers, he remained curious, asked questions, and pushed others to think more deeply. This humility forms a guardrail against becoming trapped in a single viewpoint. In modern daily life, there are simple ways to avoid the trap of rigid certainty. Checking multiple news sources, talking with people who have different backgrounds, and re-examining beliefs when new information comes up can all help. It's easy to dismiss these steps as time-consuming, but the potential damage of blindly clinging to one idea is much greater. Remember how Athens lost an entire fleet because of leadership overconfidence. History is a collection of lessons, and many revolve around this very issue. In the end, people can act foolishly at any time in any century, under any form of government. Being foolish isn't just a matter of raw intelligence. It's also a matter of openness to complexity. Everyone can become fixated, certain, and defensive if they're not mindful. The best remedy is to nurture a habit of questioning, listening, and staying curious about the many layers of any problem. That way, we stand a better chance of not causing harm through a single, narrow idea. When we stop to think about it, life is rarely black and white. Real wisdom comes from accepting shades of gray, from seeing that every action has multiple outcomes. Recognizing that there are other angles doesn't make us weaker. It makes us more prepared to adapt, survive, and avoid repeating the mistakes that have brought down greater civilizations than our own. Our world still has plenty of challenges ahead, and stubborn certainty won't help us solve them. A bit of doubt, balanced with thoughtful action, might be the difference between another tragic error and genuine progress. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.